Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's web seminar. We're excited to get started. We do have a few folks trickling in. We're at 1 o'clock Eastern time for those of you who are joining us live. So let's just give it one more minute, if you don't mind, and give those last few people logging in a chance to get in, and then we'll kick it off with some introductions and covering what we're going to, what is going to be some exciting material today. So bear with us for a few moments.
While people are trickling in, figure we could talk about the weather. That's always a fun one, right? So, Paul, how's your weather doing where you are right now?
We're in the Carolinas, and we are breaking through the heat. Hopefully, have our last 90-day last week, and getting into some fall weather. So, how about you, Nalini and Will? What are you guys seeing?
I am in the DC area. I'm in Virginia, and I am so ready for fall. I'm not one of those pumpkin spice fall people, but I am absolutely about the weather. And I think we were beautiful at the end of August, and then this crazy week came back where we were in the 90s. But I'm hoping that we go back to those 60, 70 days soon.
That's right. That's right. It'll come. How about you, Will? Where are you?
I'm also in the DC area. Not exactly where Nalini's at, but yeah, a lot of the same. I'm more of a fall person, so I feel like we had our super big heat surge over the past couple of weeks, and I'm very much ready for that to get down.
Yeah, no joke. Well, I think that is a good icebreaker there, Nalini. Appreciate sharing it. And folks, if you want to in the chat, if you're around the country and got some nicer weather than us, feel free to throw it out there. We are excited to have you today. And even if you're joining on the recording, hello, and maybe it's winter, maybe it's spring when you're listening to our voices. Who knows, right? We traverse time and space. So excited to be here today. Case Status and BluShark Digital to bring you some thought leadership. So we sponsor a lot of web events, the two of us, and we particularly wanted to get into a very interesting topic of online reviews and go deep and really help the practitioners out there to understand how you can harness customer satisfaction and really amplify that online visibility. So welcome to the session. I think it's going to be a good one that you can leave with some actionable knowledge and even some to-dos of how to take to the next level for your law firm. So quick introductions. We'll do it on this slide. I'll start it out. My name is Paul Bammert. I'm with Case Status. I'm part of our marketing department, and we are all hyper-focused on helping law firms drive outcomes. So we'll talk a little bit about what Case Status brings in our experience and our technology to that formula. But I'm super excited to partner in this session with Nalini and Will from BluShark Digital. I'll let them introduce themselves. Maybe, Nalini, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting us. I am Nalini Prasad. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at BluShark Digital. Many of you who are attending may have seen me at conferences. So I speak at about 30 legal events a year. And as Paul said, I think the goal here today is to give you as much do-it-yourself as you can handle, right? That you can take back to your team, that you can really leave this event and go change a couple of things that'll make a difference for your firm. So that's what I'm here to do. And then I'm joined by Will from our team, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yep. How's it going, guys? My name is Will McCray. As Nalini mentioned, I am one of the account strategists at BluShark. So my role and responsibility is really working in the day-to-day strategy, both in the short term and long term with a lot of our clients. So special shout out to any of my existing clients who might be in here on the webinar right now. But yep, that is my role with the team.
Great. Well, Nalini and Will, great to have you. To our audience out there, again, thank you for joining us. We hope to make the most of your time. Let's cover some housekeeping items to kick off. We're using a platform that is running in broadcast mode. Livestorm is the name of it. Pretty cool web platform that we have. But we want this to be as interactive as possible. Even though you're hearing our voice, we're not hearing you. So we're going to rely on a couple of widgets, namely the polls. If you want to check it out right now, I've got a couple of polls published out there. Specifically to get to know you. You've gotten to know your presenters today. So I've got one out there to ask, what's your primary practice area? But for a little bit of fun too, if you want to vote on your best or the best legal movie of all time, I always love to start out with that one. I didn't have time to put in my favorite Jimmy Buffett tune to salute a great songwriter and performer, but we'll get that in the next session. So be on the lookout for that. If you do have a question as we go through, either myself or Nalini or Will be monitoring the questions tab, so you can submit the questions in there as well. And because of the group and the thought leadership aspect too, I think chat is enabled. So if you want to throw some comments and questions in chat, that works as well. But questions and polls is where we'll really focus in on out there. So let me take a look at folks that have talked about the primary practice area and see what kind of answers we're getting here. So for Will and Nalini, we've got a lot of personal injury folks out there, a few workers' comp and Social Security disability, and kind of a long tail of immigration, family, real estate. So well represented, but a heavy, if there is a percentage on sort of the personal injury front. So we'll try to keep that in mind as well, although a lot of the topics we're going to talk about are applicable to just about any kind of practice. As far as movie goes, Cousin Vinny, as always, seems to lead. So well done there and a little bit of fun. So if you have a question, again, feel free to submit it. We'll try to get it answered. We've got enough time, though, to get it at the end if we don't get it during the content. So agenda and overview. Again, we want you to leave this session really understanding the idea of being visible online and the why. Why is it important to be visible online? And what does that mean? So understanding the importance of reviews to achieve this intake and this marketing enhancements, to get that online visibility, to bring in the next, class or alumni of successful clients to your business, right? So we want to also talk a little bit about measuring client satisfaction along the way, right? So when we talk about reviews, it should be a reflection of what's actually happening in your practice. And we want to talk about sort of how we can open the hood and understand that a little bit as well. Of course, data is very important here, and data turned into information, right? When we can use, customer satisfaction data, it becomes the fuel for reviews and for amplifying that. But we also need to make sure that you're findable. And that's where Nalini and Will are going to talk about the idea of, yeah, you can put a lot of voice out there, but if people don't find that awesome positive voice, then it might be moot at the end of the day. So we really want to make sure, you've got a lot of champions, raving fans out there singing your firm's praises, and that it's showing up top of the list for the other folks that are out there hunting. So a lot of great topics. And again, any question is fair game as we go deep on reviews. We want to talk about referrals. That's another day. But again, if some of those types of questions come up, we'll do our best to answer those. So the first poll that I'm going to publish now that you haven't seen beyond the icebreaker polls is basically, do you have a process? So it's a high level one. Do you have a process for acquiring reviews? So just at a high level, does your firm have somebody that owns it or have thought about it to acquire those reviews and to get them working for you? Take a few minutes to sing the Jeopardy music in my head, and then we'll take a look at the yes, no, and not sure. So good. So we've got predominantly yeses, Nalini and Will coming in, but we do have a few folks who are in the not sure camp. So certainly folks that I guess are trying to make sure that they're incrementally getting better, the yeses, and those that are not sure or knows want to take it to the next level. So I think we can do all of that as we proceed on. So I am going to do one more slide before turning it over to Nalini, which is to just talk about the why behind this. And I really like to get into the idea of the hiring decision. So you really have to take yourself out of legal professional mode for a moment and put yourself empathetically into a consumer's shoes, right? So for those practice areas out there, if you think about personal injury, nobody in their experience wants to hire a personal injury lawyer, right? No offense there, right? If something happens in their life and they have to hire you, right? And in that essence of having to hire you, they go through a hiring decision that they may not have ever really thought about before. So what do? They act like a consumer, as they do with everything else, right? And Clio's trend report tells us about that hiring decision, and that close to 3/4, 73%, do an online research, right? Some are seeking referrals too, one-on-one from people they know in their network, but going in, searching for a firm in a particular area and seeing what the democratic voice has to say is very powerful in that hiring decision. So regardless of what we spend on our marketing, our advertisements, our spend there, if we don't have this sort of foundation, we're facing headwinds as we try to grow the law firm. So again, this is about replenishing those cases you're going to close this year with more cases next year if you want to grow. And that's what this is all about. So the relevance, I think, is true to form, whether you're a solo practitioner, a medium-sized firm, a large firm, we want to make sure that we stand head and shoulders above our competition and that we're findable by these people, these consumers online. Anything, Nalini or Will, that you would add to that sort of why behind the curtain?
No, I couldn't agree with everything that you said more, right? We'll kind of take it into a deeper level in a bit.
Perfect. Well, Nalini, on that, let's start with locals. I'll turn it over to you. And I know we have a poll, but why don't you tee us off on this idea of getting local?
Yeah, and if you want to run that poll while I'm chatting, or if you want to run that poll before we start the section, I'm also happy to do that.
Yeah, I'll post it up right now.
Yep. So if you want to let them know what that question is and what we're polling here, and then I can.
Yeah, so the basic is, do you have your Google business profile updated? And while Nalini is talking, let me get that updated out here.
Yeah. Excellent. So Paul mentioned the idea of online visibility, and the idea of getting reviews is extremely important because a consumer wants to know how you've handled other consumers before, right? Have you worked with enough people when they have to make that decision of, do they want to hire you? We all know that people work with people they like and trust, right? And when they haven't had a phone call with you and all they really have to go off of is their internet search result, they're looking at those reviews. Now, the catch-22 here is, for online visibility, you want to be on that first page when someone is unfortunately going through something and needs a personal injury lawyer, right? Or a workers' comp lawyer, or whatever it is that you do. But if you are to show and have that visibility, but you don't have the reviews, you're not getting the conversion, right? What good does it do to show on page one if that's not going to turn into a phone call? So it's always, always important to say, those reviews are what are going to get you the conversion, right? You want them to work in sync with one another. This section that we're going to take on, and Will's going to take you through with the meat here, is your Google business profile, right? So your Google business profile is the heart of how you are going to be able to teach Google what you do and why you're the smartest person in the room and why you deserve to be on page one, right? So we'll take you through those factors, but really important. You can rank all you want, but if you don't have those reviews, it's not going to help. And on the other hand, you can have 400 reviews, but if a consumer can't see that, what good do those 400 reviews do you, right? The last piece I'll go here is when we talk about this 3-pack. I know that we're going to say that a lot, and you'll say this visibility, what is that? If you were to take your phone out right now and you said, it's lunchtime, some places, right? Best pizza. You're not going to type in a city name, right? You're just going to say best pizza. You're looking for a service. And what you'll note is that at the top of that search result, you will have results that have a business address, their review count, the website button, a call button. It is the most visible result. That is the local 3-pack. It gives you the 3 best options that Google believes deserves to help you. So Will's going to take it from here and kind of tell you how you get into that 3-pack. What are the steps to get you there? And if Paul wants to, before Will starts, kind of give us the results of that poll, Will can tailor it to our audience.
So we've got a heavy yes. So again, Google business profile, most of the folks are a yes in that. So again, it might be honing in on making sure that the best practices are being achieved there.
Cool. Yep. Thanks, Nalini. Thanks, Paul. I'm glad to see that everybody here, at least everybody who answered the poll, has their Google business profile set up. As you guys know, the Google business profile is really the central hub of your business on Google. So it contains a lot of baseline information, your business name, your website address, your phone number, all that stuff, hours of operation, everything that a consumer would theoretically need to know from an entry-level standpoint. Also contains additional information such as reviews. You can see in the box here, we have it sort of highlighted. Shows a lot of information such as not only the total review star sort of quantity value, but also the total number of reviews there as well. Also includes some more in-depth information such as service areas so that Google is able to understand exactly where you're able to serve a potential client. And also the products and services that you serve in the first place. So you can see everything sort of there in the screenshot on the right-hand side. Important to note that the Google business profile isn't only important from a potential client standpoint, but it's also very, very critical as far as Google understanding everything about your business as well. when Google is trying to make a recommendation to a client, this is all information that they need to know and they need to understand in order to confidently recommend you when someone is making a search. So a lot of times people will only think of the Google Business Profile as something that's important for a potential client to see, but it's equally, if not more important, for Google's standpoint so that they can confidently understand and categorize your business within their algorithm. So moving on from there, just touching back on the local 3-pack that Nalini got into a little bit. Whether or not you explicitly know exactly what the local 3-pack is, I'm pretty confident that everybody in this webinar has probably dealt with it within the past 3-4 days, if not even today. You know, an example that I had, and Nalini gave an example on pizza shops, but I just moved a couple weeks ago and I needed to find a new dry cleaning place, you know, in my neighborhood, right? So that's just another example of ways that the 3-pack will kind of be suggested to you. The local 3-pack is essentially Google's way of providing the user with what they believe to be the 3 best options based on a variety of factors that are listed here on the left-hand side. Things like proximity, both the total number of reviews and the overall rating of reviews, keywords in the business name, you know, things such as like XYZ injury lawyers, the categories, the products and services that you're indicating that you provide. And then it also takes into consideration more technical things, such as your local citation signals, backlinks that you've built, the age and authority of your Google Business Profile, as well as the authority of your website. So it really is sort of a combination of a lot of factors that are all coming into play that are resulting in Google being confident that you are one of the 3 best options to provide based on whatever search the user is running at that time.
And one of the things I would hone in on here is, right, these are just a few of the factors, as Will mentioned. There's hundreds of factors, and really important, it doesn't go by most reviews to least reviews, right? If you look at this 3-pack, you've got not necessarily the person at the top, and this one actually goes in order, but as you look at 3-packs, you know, sometimes you'll see somebody with 15 reviews in there, and you're like, well, how did they get in there? It's because of all these other factors, right? So one factor, and kind of backing up too, Will said that it's important for the AI bot to know what information you're putting on there. This is a Google product. Google creates these fields knowing what it wants to know about your business, right? So as these new fields come out, it's really important to focus on those newer fields as they're weighted heavier as to figure out who's going to be in that 3-pack. And Will, what would you kind of think is one of the most important fields to have filled in the last, let's say, 6 months, that somebody could go after this webinar and go fill it in on their own?
I would say probably one of the most important things is going to be the service areas. So it's something that's definitely underutilized across the board. It is not something that is, you know, your name, address, phone number, anything like that. But essentially what your service areas is doing is it's telling Google, hey, I'm located here, but I also serve clients in XYZ neighborhoods surrounding me. So what that does is if there are not a lot of options in that exact street that someone may be looking at, Google is able to take your information that you've provided through their service areas, and they understand that you are someone who is able to assist in that location. So absolutely something that I would recommend as a takeaway here is going on your Google Business Profile, taking a look at your service areas. If that isn't something that you have filled out yet, they allow you to fill out up to 20. And that's absolutely something that you guys can go in and do yourselves and see hopefully some return there relatively quickly.
So Will, that was one of the questions came in through the queue, is this idea of multiple locations. So if you're a firm operating in California and you've got offices from, you know, San Diego all the way north to, you know, San Francisco, that's how you handle multiple sites in what you just described.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, the idea of a law firm under a single brand, but operating on multiple locales. So the idea, it's almost like the idea of a franchise or a chain in the pizza analogy, right? How do you make sure that you get the right office or the right set of reviews for that brand, given all of the potential localities? I assume it's the setting that you were talking about that you could give multiple locations, but just want to be clear because there was a question coming in on that.
Yeah. So when it comes to multiple locations, what you're actually going to want to do is make sure that you have a different Google Business Profile set up for each location.
Okay, great.
With the local service ads, that is going to be more sort of micro targeting specific neighborhoods. So, for example, we're in Washington, D.C. If anyone out there is familiar with the Washington, D.C. Sort of geography, you have different neighborhoods, right? So you have Adams Morgan, you have DuPont, things like that, as well as different streets, different regions within there. So that is really what you're going to kind of be targeting with the service areas, are those sort of more niche areas from a micro standpoint. If you're looking at multiple office spaces throughout different towns and cities, that is the point where you want to have different Google Business profiles set up for each location.
And that all comes down to competition, right? So if it is an area just right outside of, like, a few miles away from your existing office, that's where Will is saying just add it as a service area. There's not a lot of firms or options there. But if you want to reach 30 miles away in another hub city, and there are a lot of firms there, it's really about the competition. If there's too many firms there, you're going to need an office location, and you're going to need a whole new Google Business profile. The service areas just help expand the reach of each of those markets, right? So it's really it depends answer, which is one of my favorite things with law firms, right?
Yeah. If anybody has any specific questions about, their exact situation, feel free. I think there's a QR code at the end. Feel free to scan that, reach out to myself, Nalini, Paul. We'll be happy to help give you some advice on seeing your exact situation and how that may change things.
Cool.
Next up, so leaving a Google review, which is obviously the main topic of the presentation. Most of you guys are probably already familiar with leaving a Google review from the client standpoint or from the user standpoint. The most important thing that you can do is make it as easy as possible, right? When you are trying to acquire a review from a client, we want to make it as easy as possible make it as easy as possible for the user to go in and leave a review, right? We want to remove all barriers to entry there. One thing that you guys can use as a quick takeaway from the webinar is, if you actually log on to your Google Business profile, they do provide you a nice little short link that you can just go and grab, that you can use to provide to your clients when you're asking them to leave a review. This simplifies the whole process. It'll pull open exactly this screen that you see on the right-hand side. Takes you exactly where the user needs to be to leave a review. And that saves you a lot of the trouble of having to sort of walk them through the process or say, hey, type this into Google and then do this. So that simplifies the whole process. It's worth noting the user must have a Gmail account in order to leave a review on your Google Business profile. So they must have a Gmail account, and they may need to log into it if they aren't automatically logged into it. When leaving a review, the user does have the option to leave a sort of open-ended message there, but they are required to give some sort of star rating, which is going to be 0 through 5 with increments of half. So with leaving the reviews, it is worth noting that it is something we highly encourage to get that description or that open-ended response if possible. We know for a fact it's something that Google's algorithm is crawling, and they're understanding what's being written about in these reviews. They're trying to look for buzzwords or keywords such as case types, locations, things like compassionate, responsive, injury, car accident, whatever it may be. And these reviews are being crawled, and it is something that Google is taking advantage of when trying to suggest the best options to a client. One question, I did see a question come up in the chat, which is, have other clients had challenges with reviews coming through over the past couple of months? Ours are down considerably, and we've even submitted a Google ticket about it, but have not heard back. The answer to that would be yes. It is something that we have seen some issues with really over the past, I'd say year or so. I know that Google is paying a lot more attention to reviews these days than they were historically, trying to crack down on spam. So if your review has been flagged or someone has left a review that's been flagged for any reason, one thing that I have found to be helpful when asking for reviews is seeing if the client could take a screenshot of their review and send it to you as well. There is a dispute process where we can reach out to Google support and try and get either the reviews reinstated or try and get some more information as to why they weren't posted in the first place. So these screenshots do help us a great deal. And on top of that, Google does require the reviews. They say there's a 14-day wait period, right? So anywhere from 0 to 14 days, you may see the review go live. If it's been past 14 days, that is when you're able to reach out to Google support. So if you reach out within that 14-day period, a lot of the time they just either won't get back to you, or they'll say, hey, it takes 14 days. So I would say the answer to that is definitely yes. We have seen that issue. I don't know if you have anything you want to add there, Nalini.
A little bit in depth with like some print screens of this exact issue for a year ago. So I think that's perfect for now. And then we'll touch on it again a little bit later.
Cool. And then I will kick it back over to Nalini to talk a little bit about local service ads.
Yeah, so in the interest of time too, Paul, you can pop up a survey here just to see how many people have heard about this, and then we can tailor this conversation to just the knowledge of this piece. But local service ads, as we'll take you through pretty quickly, is let's say you've just started an office location and you don't have that juice in your website. You haven't been doing SEO. We're maybe a far ways away from ranking in the local 3-pack. The local service ads gives you an opportunity to get cases a little bit quicker and see that instant gratification. It is a paid situation that looks like the local 3-pack. So this is a Google product, came out a couple of years ago. Google found a way to make money. What they noticed was people are not clicking on the traditional ads. Consumers will see it and say, oh, well, this business paid their way to the top. They're probably not the best option, right? So what Google did was come out with a paid version. Businesses can pay Google to show up, but it looks like the local 3-pack. So now you've got this trust factor, you've got people clicking into it. And the coolest part is that it's not pay per click, it is pay per call. You have an actual lead on the phone before you pay any money to Google, right? And so what we have found is that these are traditionally, right now, still 2 years later, your cheapest cost per case signed. However, reviews play that big part again. If you are paying, you're bidding, and you show, and you don't have any reviews, but the people next to you have tons of reviews, you're likely not going to get the phone call, right? So there's no reason to be running the ads, bidding, if you're not doing your due diligence and looking good to the consumer. So we'll take you through a little bit of the odds and ends of how this works. But do we know how many people are actually using this or successful with this?
Yeah, we're a little bit more diversified here. We've got about a third and a third and a third between using it, not using it, and not sure.
Yeah. So we'll go back to the nitty-gritty.
So yeah, thanks, Nalini. For anyone who's not using local service ads, I really hope that this is something that you guys can take away from this presentation as well. Still to this day, like Nalini said, it's pretty much something, especially on the personal injury side of things, that we recommend to all of our clients across the board. So what really makes local service ads unique is their positioning on the search engine results page. As you can see here on the right-hand side, they do appear at the top of the search engine results page. And they are different from traditional pay-per-click in the sense where you are not paying for the click to your website. You are paying for the lead or the call itself. And this is a huge advantage because it does allow us to get those leads, right? We know we're paying for a lead versus paying for a click. Another big thing that they provide through local service ads is actually the option to dispute any leads that are not legitimate leads. So if somebody calls you guys, they call through your local service ad, it's a spam call or it's a junk call, you are able to go in and dispute that lead, say, hey, this is not a legitimate lead, and Google will actually refund you for that lead. So Google does not care. That being said, Google doesn't really care if it's like a signed case or not, but they do care if the lead that they are providing you is legitimate. Now, on the personal injury side of things, we usually see a cost of anywhere from about $150 to $200 per lead. And then for criminal trust and estates, it can even get less than that, anywhere around like $100 cost per lead. So with that being said, they do require a screening process for the LSAs. You have to submit some information such as like your bar card and information about the firm, pretty easy, accessible stuff. And it usually takes 1 to 2 weeks for that verification to go through. Also, just to tie it back in to the Google Business Profile, local service ads are connected to your Google Business Profile, and it's where they get a lot of the information that we are going to kind of display here. So this is just a close-up screenshot of what the local service ads 3-pack looks like. You can see it displays a lot of the same information as your Google Business Profile, right? You have the name of the firm, the average number of reviews, average rating, and then it does give some more information such as years established, the hours and availability. And like I said, most, if not all of this information is displayed through your Google Business Profile. Now, with ranking in your local service ad, it is a lot different it is different from what allows you to rank in the local 3-pack or in the organic results. So the big question here is like, why do reviews matter in all of this? And it's because reviews are one of, if not the most important rankings factor when it comes to the visibility of your LSA profile. So you can see here, we have a bunch of them listed out. Things like your budget, right? So encouraging Google to show your profile as much as they possibly can by indicating that you have a lot of money to spend here. Whether that is the case or whether it's not the case, that's totally fine. The proximity, how close are you to the individual who is running the search, the context of the search, and then some other things like reputation, right? And another very important one is responsiveness. So this is something that is not as intuitive as many of the other rankings factors here. And this is basically Google saying that they need to know that when they recommend you to a user, you will answer the phone when they call. So essentially what responsiveness is here is answering the phone anytime that someone calls you through your local service ad. We want to make sure that when you have this set up, you are answering the phone as quickly as you possibly can, and ideally 100% of the time, right? We know that if Google sees that you are not answering the call, it is something where they will show your LSA profile less frequently. It's something that is not a set it and forget it. It's something you have to maintain consistently over the course of, from now until you are no longer running local service ads. Something that we do know for a fact is that if a user calls you and you don't answer through your local service ads profile, you can actually be dinged up to 90 days. So very, very important that your intake is solid through local service ads if you want to get the max benefit there. Sorry. Go ahead, Nalini.
Yeah, one other thing I was going to say that I would add there with the responsiveness is that we've recently kind of gotten information from Google, and as more and more people and firms are trying for those 3 spots, right? It's old news now, it's 2 years old. They're finding ways to limit people's ability to show. So one of those things with the responsiveness is we've found that if you miss just one call, you could not show for a potential of 75 to 90 days, right? So it's that important for that phone call to be answered when you're doing this. So intake, having a system, if you're going to run these ads and you're going to pay for them, make sure that someone is picking up that phone. Make sure that it's 30 seconds before you get charged. So try, if it's a buddy calling you through this line or it's someone that is already a client, try to train your intake team to say, hey, look, we're going to call you back in just a minute, right? But get off the phone within that 30 seconds. You don't end up having to pay for it. You don't have to go through that whole appeals process too. So just a quick tip there.
Yep. And I do see a bunch of questions coming through, guys. So if we aren't able to answer them immediately, we will go back and make sure that we answer them or towards the end of the presentation. So just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of that. With the LSA reviews, once you have booked a client through LSA, they do offer the ability to go in and have a review submitted through that profile there. So just some, extra information there. You can book them through the system as well. And then I will kick it back off to Paul, I believe, who is going to talk about raving fans.
Yeah, thanks. So again, just kind of recap, because this is great. I mean, the idea of the why, right? That we want people to find us. And Nalini, I think you hit it pretty well. A, they got to find us, and B, they got to find good information when they're there, right? And some good numbers. So when we think about that, that's where we want to sort of transition a little bit into the raving fans kind of concept, right? That's the raw materials by which we fuel these reviews. So you can't go out there and pay people to review you, or I guess you could, but that's on the unethical side of doing business, and it won't sustain. On the flip side, if you can turn every active client or client alumni into a raving fan, and get that easy ask that Will talked about out to them, that's when this thing starts paying off year after year after year and becomes a sustainable growth. So from the case status side, we want to talk a little bit about how we see not only the idea of raving fans, but how you measure it and then how you put it into action. So my poll question starting out this section, let me find it here. If you currently measure customer satisfaction. So I published another poll there, just a yes or no or not sure. And I won't tell you what I normally get on this question. We'll see if this group is along the same lines. But this can be a scary topic, and I want to be empathetic to that, right? So a lot of people are not necessarily like, what if they all came back and said I'm terrible? And all I can say to that is they're going to think that anyway. You might as well know. And if you know, you can take the scariness out of it and put a playbook together. So as far as folks that are out there, we've got about what I see, 50% are yeses and 50% are no. And if I had to accelerate a little bit forward, most of the yeses do it one time, and it's usually near the end of the case. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So I bring this idea of a formula for raving fans into first delight, second measure, third ask. And that's where it ties into some of the things that you saw with Will is making the ask, but also making it an easy ask. So just a little comment on delight. The rule of thumb, and again, coming from case status, we are all focused on the consumer behavior and what they want and meeting them where they're at. And that's my one piece of takeaway is if you take anything away from this side of delighting, put yourself in those shoes of how they want to operate. The first thing is, and this is all consumers in the United States, we expect to engage with our favorite brands via our smartphone, right? 93% of the 5 hours we spend every day on a smartphone is in an app. So think about that and think about how you're putting your brand in front of these folks, right? You also want to think about this idea of empowerment and self-serving. The psychological truth of what's going on in our society. Think about like when you go to the grocery store, you self-bag. When you go to the airport now, you go to the kiosk, right? When you go to the gas station, you pump your own gas. There's so many things that we do, and we want to do them ourselves because it empowers us. It's faster, immediate gratification. The same goes when it comes to servicing information about our legal cases, right? We want to have that information at our fingertips and put it into play, right? At the same time, we want to keep that brand intimacy going, right? Encourage the communications, right? If we can get rid of the update, telephone and email call, what's going on in my case, what's going on in my case, we can get rid of most of those communications because you've empowered them. Now you get excited when the phone rings, when a client's calling you, right? So that's one other thing to think about as well when it comes to delighting your clients. And then again, tying it all into your practice management or your case management solution, that's going to make sure that left hand and right hand of your team knows what's going on. So these are all things we eat, breathe, and sleep at Case Status. If you want to learn more, again, we'll have an opportunity to go deep. So let's assume you're doing these things, right? Or let's assume in your own way, you're meeting the client where they're at. And now we have this idea of, I need to measure, right? And I'm big on the engineering, manage what you measure. If you're not measuring it, there's no way you can ever get better at it, right? So client satisfaction, we want to take the guessing game out of it. And we'll talk about taking the scariness out of it too. But there's a basic methodology that's used in consumer businesses, in business-to-business businesses, and it's known as Net Promoter Score. You ask a very simple question, right? Are you likely to refer me to family and friends? And you ask it on a scale of 0 to 10. This idea of 9 and 10s is what we call promoters. The 7 and 8s are what we call passives. And the 6 and belows are what we call detractors. And they all work as either tailwinds or headwinds into our business. And so 50% of you said you are asking. That's great, right? And that's what we see in our studies. And 50% don't, though. And I encourage you, even if it's an email survey one time, or if you can set it up to be automated, ask this question and think about the journey that if you get a 6, at least you know, and put a playbook together for your staff of what to do when the 6 comes in, right? Likewise, if you get the 9s and 10s, now you'll know how to fuel all of the things that Will and Nalini are what you're talking about, right? So again, manage what you measure. You want to basically get a pulse on this emotion. I get it is emotion, it's perception by your clients, but getting a quantitative measure on that will certainly help, and the playbook will take the fear out of it. And we see this day in, day out where folks who have avoided this topic can put it into play. So the basics of a survey, Define what you want to learn, figure out which channel you're going to do. Again, you could do it online, you could do it via phone, you could do it through email. Those are the methods at your disposal in a traditional sense. Write the questions. The basic question I'll talk about on the next one slide is the leading question that'll get everything answered. But maybe you want to learn a little bit more about the team and a little bit of color. So think about what you want to do, what your triggers are in frequency for sending these surveys out. And then again, get a systematic approach where you bring the data back in, you analyze it, you share the results, and you act on it. The playbook is most important here. So again, if you want to check out some of the links that we'll provide in the slide deck, Constant Contact has a great playbook here. Talking a little bit about Net Promoter Score, you'll hear me talk about it. It's just a rating of taking all your 9s and 10s and putting them up against all of your 6s and belows, and you kind of ignore the middle ones. 30 is where we're at as a legal services space, which is analogous to commercial airlines. So I'll pause there for a moment to consider the last time you flew commercial airline and how non-client centric it was. As a 30, even though it's considered fair in a business to consumer entity, it is in the neighborhood and peer group of commercial airlines. So we have an opportunity to stand, again, head and shoulders above our competition, to be 50, great, 80, world class. And that's the idea of taking all these scores and analyzing it when you do the survey and measuring it over time. If your Net Promoter Score grows over time, you are doing good things to create sustainable earned growth in the future where your reviews will service you, right? So NPS best practices, the best question to ask is, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or colleague? 0 to 10. If you send one note on a 1 to 2 month basis to your client base, that's the question to ask. Quantify the emotion and get it down and log it. The best time to ask, as frequent as you can, but really we want to limit this to 1 time per month and not be too frequent because again, you want to give yourself frequency enough, but not ask the question too often. And you want to be transparent, right? Let them know why you're asking the question, because you're client-centric first. It's going to impact how you react. Again, give them a little bit of empowerment along the way. At Case Status, we implement this as part of the app experience. When you cross a threshold of a stage, for instance, that journey, we trigger the survey to go out automatically. And again, I call that the power of the thumb, Will. When you were talking about the reviews, I see a lot of research that says when you ask for a Google review, guess what? They're on their smartphone, which means they're playing the thumb game, right? You want to make it as simple as possible where they just have to click on the 5 stars and say a few things and submit, right? Same thing here. You want to send it, have it easy to open, and make it so that they can just click it and go. But at the Case Status example, we pull this in and we summarize it at the case level, at the staff level, at the practice area level, at the firm level. And so all the analytics come along with it. So again, you have to delight first, meet them where they're at. You have to measure, ask them that question, send a survey out, use Net Promoter Score as a firm over time. And then you have to ask. This is interesting because a lot of folks do not make the ask. I think I do have another poll here. Let me see if I can find it. The confidence overview. Here it is, just the automation way. And maybe, maybe you don't have an automation way, but I am curious if your ask of a review it happens systematically, maybe is a better way to answer the poll that I've just published there. And I'll scroll up there to take a look at some of those ways. So most of you do not have an automated way. So think about that. Again, if you're not automating it, you're putting it on somebody's staff shoulders. If you're putting it on your own JD shoulders, right? Think about the cost of administering just, sort of the ask. And that's where you want to think about how you can make this systematic. The key to note here, though, is if you delight and you create a lot of 9s and 10s, right? And you now know who they are, they're not just going to go out to Google and do it, right? Data shows that 1 out of 10 will get it activated and do something, right? It's the exact opposite of a detractor. A detractor will go out and tell the masses, do a review unsolicited. But the happy people have to be solicited. And the point of this research is simply to say, if you ask, 80% will do it, right? Like, so you just need to systematically get in front of them and say, hey, I'm so glad that you've had this great experience. Can you help other people like you that are out there that need to have a great experience, right? Regardless of the practice area, again, a lot of us don't necessarily intend to hire that legal team at some point. We're we encounter a life experience where we have to. And so having that, that bit of information and that trust of seeing how people are voting online in the public space is very important. And they will understand that because they used to be in those shoes. They had to go through intake. They had to go through the hiring decision. So if they're a 9 and 10, they want to help all those other people that are out there in that role, right? So this is where, again, the 9s and 10s, as you go through, those are the folks that fuel what Nalini and Will have been talking about. Those are the ones you want to take from being systematically in your data, in your system, and you want to get them into the public domain, right? So that's when you want to ask. You also want to have plans, though, to convert 6s into 7s and 8s into 9s, right? So think about that as you measure 2 of the playbook to create more 8s and 9s. So when it comes to the ask, I won't belabor it as because Will's kind of already covered it. You can ask for a referral. You can ask for a review. You can ask for both, maybe at different times. But again, I will reiterate what Will has said, right? Which is make it as simple as possible. You know who they are. You know how to communicate with them. You might even be able to sub-segment them based on the Gmail accounts, right? I didn't know that, Will, that you can only do it if you have a Gmail account, or I guess if you have a Google account associated with another email. But if you could do that quick hierarchy, 9s and 10s, that with a Gmail, I mean, think about how fast, lightning quick you should get those 5-star reviews, right, coming through for your locale. So in the case status example, again, back to the automation, 80% adoption on the app. We're not communicating via email. We're not communicating via phone. We're not communicating via text. We're communicating via the app. They contact you via the app, and you use the platform to contact back to them. So the beauty of it is you're able to reach them all the time, even when they become a client alumni, right? The app typically stays there, and you can stay and drip all sorts of great news and messages, including a year from their anniversary saying, congratulations on your great outcome that we delivered. By the way, if you know any friends or family that need this kind of legal services, feel free to refer it. Or would you like to get out there and do that review, right? Even though you used us a year ago. Still relevant, and still how you can take a happy client and make them a client forever, client for life. So this all trickulates through. We're going to be doing some more thought leadership on the idea of earned growth. You're going to hear that a lot coming from case status, which is the idea of how to better NPS or client satisfaction scores actually return to growth, to actual more clients and more revenue for the firm. So there is a direct correlation there, but that's a conversation for another time. Ultimately, it's this formula that we've been talking about with Nalini and Will. So with that said, I think I am handing it back, Nalini, if I'm not mistaken.
We're good.
Yeah.
Yep. And so a lot of the questions that have come in, I've put a little bit of tidbits of answers there, but this is the meat of where all of those questions you have asked are going to be answered. So we have a couple of visuals that'll help here. So as we jump into this, one of the first things that someone had asked about was, are you having trouble with reviews? And so on this next slide, you'll see that we did have, and what we've seen, Will mentioned, for the past year, we've seen a little bit of issues with someone has literally told you they've left a review, but you don't see it on your Google business profile. This has been normal for a lot of businesses. And what we've seen is that it's being filtered, right? So if we really go deep in and figure out why Google is doing this and not showing them, some word or phrase that's being used in the review that's being left is somewhat triggering their filter, and then it goes into a little box, right? And so let's say it's 5 or 6 reviews that are missing, and then there's 10 more. They're all sitting in that box, and what part of Will's job is with forward facing with the clients all the time is they'll say, hey, I know I got this one. We'll work with our team to then escalate this to support. And if we can get through support, taking multiple times of talking to them, right? They'll say, oh yeah, look, we found that in the filter. And if you get really lucky, when they go through and they find that one issue, they might go through and also manually put up all of these reviews that are in that box, right? So it is a manual process. It's not promised that it's going to work. It takes a lot of time with support. So what we say in the meantime is just keep trucking, right? A lot of times it'll be a few that'll get caught in that filter, but you'll notice other ones will post, right? At the end of the day, we can continue to try with support to get those guys up, but totally normal. It's not anything you're doing wrong. It doesn't mean you're about to be suspended, but this is where it's the importance of what words are they using, right? And so on this next slide, we had talked a lot about process. And so I'm not going to, as Paul said, to belabor that that point. But Paul, if you go to the next slide, the one thing that I will say here is, you said automate it. And one thing that I think all law firms and lawyers are very comfortable with, and we know in the business, is cover your ass. And so one thing that I will say here is having an automation is covering your ass. I think that you should have both buckets, every bucket you can possibly have, whether it's in marketing or it's in intake process or it's in review capturing. You want to maybe have that automation that is there as a process, it happens, but then a lot of people like that human ask too, right? There is no reason why you can't do both. It's extra pings. And one of the things that you learn here with us too today is that sometimes it takes 4 asks before someone gives you that review, right? And that's the importance of having the automation hit someone every week or 2 weeks or whatever it might be. So that's my big thing, is have the automation, because it 100% covers it. It doesn't leave room for things to fall through the cracks, right? On this next slide, when we're talking about, how do you, if I get a mischief review or from non-clients, how do I deal with that? Or if I get a negative review, there's always a way for you to flag it. There are some, there's lots of different tips that we have. There used to be a magic number. If you got 15 people to flag it, it would get on Google's radar. It would have a good chance of coming down. You can actually go in and report it or flag it, as you see here. You can go through support and say, hey, look, it fits one of your 6 things that's against the rules, whether it's like flagrant language, or I can prove that it wasn't a client, right? So you can go through that process, but at the end of the day, that process takes a long time. And we always say it's an average, right? It's okay to have a negative review. If you have 500 5-star reviews, you look fake. It does not hurt you to have a negative review, especially if that review isn't the worst thing they can say about you. When I'm looking at a restaurant, right, to go out, I'm going to go straight to the negative reviews before I go to the positive reviews. I just want to see what the worst thing is someone says. So not the end of the world, but we say try to keep your average up. So if you get 1 bad review, go get 5 more positive reviews, right? And while you're working on going through support. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that this is kind of what it looks like for the different reasons you can report. If it falls into one of these reasons, God bless, it's a lot easier to get it escalated through support. The more that you can take a photo of your intake system, or that they weren't, you saw that they called one time, they didn't turn into a client, whatever information you can give Google on that first attempt at support, the easier it makes their job, right? So always make it easy for support if you want them to get back to you to quicker or whatever that may be. So then the next slide is the importance of that, the words that you're using, right? We talk about this, and one of these great questions that we had today was, well, can I respond to reviews, and can I put car accident lawyer in there? Or can I put criminal lawyer in there? Because it's harder for me to get reviews in the first place as a criminal lawyer. Who wants to raise their hand and publicly say, they helped me with like my 5th DUI? Nobody, right? So at the end of the day, the words matter. Google are crawling them, as Will said earlier, but it's the words that the consumers are putting in there that matter, right? If it was as easy as being able to respond, then the business could manipulate that, we'd all be doing it left and right. So from our case study so far, we see that it is words that are crawled from what the consumer is saying. So now the last tip that I leave people with here is, with that process, if you have one already, making it easy by giving them leading questions. So let's say you're doing the ask in person. Personal injury lawyer, they come in, I'm going to go get your check. I'm going to get some paperwork for you to sign. I'm going to just text you this link. It's the link that takes you directly to that nice screen where all they have to do is click the stars and leave some words. But we all don't know what words to say. Sometimes when you're like, well, I don't know, I could write a whole paragraph, I could say one thing. But if you make it easy for them, you say, I'm going to go grab this paperwork and I'll be right back. Give them 10 minutes, right? If you wouldn't mind, just kind of let them know what you enjoyed working with me. What was your favorite part about working with me? And what did I help you with, right? So now automatically, I know what I'm going to write. They helped me with a car accident, and they helped me with, I really enjoyed that he was always responsive, or she was responsive. Now you've got those keywords in there. They're actually doing it. It's quick and easy. Someone asked about images, and I think this is really important. You can do images in a review. It's not necessarily crawled, right? Images can have alt text and all that good stuff, but that's when you're putting it on your site. And I think that images are really helpful for industries like food and clothing, right? Because you're going to make a decision based on seeing, oh, that pasta looks really good, I should go to that restaurant. But when it comes to law firms, you can have a feel good photo, right? A picture of the settlement check or a happy client with the lawyer. At the end of the day, that's not necessarily going to be a conversion factor for you. It's fine to get them to do the photo, but where we live and how hard it is to get the reviews already, it almost gives that extra step and an extra block that Will talked about earlier. And if we want to eliminate those blocks, we want to make it easy, we wouldn't necessarily ask for an image, but if they wanted to put it in, that's fine. I just don't think that it's going to help any extra to get you to rank. So here in this last slide, you see the words that Google crawls in these reviews. The way that they choose these words are that the word has shown up in 3 separate reviews or more, right? And if you click on any of these words, it works like a filter. So if I click on settlement, it'll show me the 21 reviews that has the word settlement. It's good for the consumer, but at the end of the day, the thing that I care the most about is that Google is equating this business in this location with these words, right? And so if someone Googles that they care about vehicle and law firm or insurance company, Google's going to say, well, they've helped X number of people and they're a good answer. So words matter. And that's kind of what I leave you with. If you guys have other questions or there's questions in there that you wanted to address.
There's one more question that I don't think we address live or individually. And it's basically if a client or lead leaves a review and it does get filtered, doesn't that affect the rating of the law firm?
If it gets filtered, then it's not in the rating, right? It's not coming in as a 0. No, okay. It's just in your box. So that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. I think that's the last one that we've got there. And that's not to say if you've got a question, you can still submit it. I know we're coming to the top of the hour, so I want to make sure that we close with a couple of things. I posted a poll if you'd like follow-up, so you can answer it a couple of different ways. You can go to the poll and say yes or not yet. You can hit us in questions or chat and say, yeah, I'd love follow up, and you can give us details about what topic. Got a QR code if you got your camera handy. That'll take you to a form, and you can just hand raise that way. Or if you want to ping Will, Nalini, myself directly, or all 3 of us on the topic today, and where we can help your firm out or any questions that you have. But I think Nalini and Will, it looks like we're pretty clean when it comes to the chat and the questions queue. So maybe on behalf of the team and all of our participants today, and those of you who are listening to us in the future, I just want to say thank you. And hopefully this was a very compelling and actionable topic. So Nalini, Will, any closing remarks from your side?
No.
I was going to say, appreciate all the engaging questions, guys. Definitely feel free to reach out if you're looking for anything more specific. Obviously, a lot of the questions are not always going to be cut dry, yes or no. So if you have any specific examples, feel free to reach out.
No, and there was
Amy. This has been great.
Amy did ask a question about.
Sorry.
And offline, I will, if we have an email address, I'll go ahead and send her some stuff personally about, if you have criminal clients and they don't really want to put things, what are some tips to try to get those?
Oh yeah, great point. Yeah, good question, right?
Didn't forget about her, but appreciate all the time,
Amy,
Paul.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up on that one. I'll make sure to get you guys the information there. So
we should have Amy's email address. I'll pass it over to you, Lainey.
Perfect. Well, again, set up those accounts, get LSA working, delight your clients, measure it, make the ask simple. And again, I think the idea of growing your firm is going to give you a good foundation to get those 75% of people that are searching online to encounter a very awesome law firm. So hope everybody enjoyed the session. We'll see you on the next Thought Leadership. Nalini and Will, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye, everyone.
Will.